Hi, I'm Patrick Dunnican. At Gibbons, we believe that citizens need to be informed about the complex issues that affect their lives. That's why we're proud to support the programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
Funding for this special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by Barnabas Health. Life is better healthy. The New Jersey Education Association. The law firm of Gibbons, P.C. New Jersey Resources. NJM. Auto insurance, homeowners insurance, and more, with a focus on safety and financial stability. NJ Best. New Jersey's 529 College Savings Plan. Turn a dream into a degree. And by International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825. Promotional support provided by NJ.com, Small News, Big News, True Jersey, and by Politicker NJ.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
When you first heard that they were doing Charlie Rose and Gayle King, didn't you go, what?
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No. People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
We're joined by Jon Bramnick, Assemblyman Jon Bramnick, leader of the Republican Party in the Assembly. We're here at the Business and Industry Association 2015 Public Policy Forum. Let me ask you, Assemblyman, after the general elections, there was an election in November. You remember that one?
I remember quite well.
Your assessment as to what voters were thinking and why the election turned out the way it did?
You had 80% of the electorate not show up. You had people who were mad with a lot of money. That means the public unions, teachers union, and they spent millions in a very low turnout. So when people are mad and they have a lot of money, they do really well in what we call swing districts, districts that actually Democrats outnumber Republicans. I mean, that's basically what happened. This was not a voter recall of Republicans. This was a small part of the electorate with a lot of money.
So let's talk about 2016. I mean, there are a whole range of issues being discussed at the BAA, Business and Industry Association forum today. Legislators are here, business leaders. It's important stuff. There was a survey taken that Michelle Sikirka, the CEO here, will be talking about. What would you say the most important issues facing not just the business community, but the entire, all citizens of the state of New Jersey?
Well, it's taxes.
Which taxes?
All the taxes. We're the highest tax state in the country. Now, I was just in Florida checking out of a supermarket, and the woman saw I was wearing something from New Jersey. She goes like this, "Oh, I used to be in Point Pleasant. I just couldn't afford New Jersey. Now my taxes are $600. You know, these are not people who don't love New Jersey. They do. They just can't afford to live here. And that is a very dangerous path. And I have to tell you, sometimes you see a lot of politics in Trenton and not enough policy. And that has to be the focus.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about, Assemblyman talk about taxes. Let's break it down a little bit. The death tax situation. We are the only state in the nation, Assemblyman, where there are two death taxes. What are they?
Inheritance and estate tax.
What are they exactly?
Well, one is for your family when they inherit money, they have to pay a substantial tax in addition to a federal tax. An inheritance tax is somebody outside the family. So the people receiving the money have to pay, and the estate has to pay. That's a double tax that you see in maybe one other state.
Okay, so what's the problem? We've had it for a long time.
But that's the problem. The problem is Florida doesn't have the estate inheritance tax. So what we have to do is we have to get in line with other states because that's why people move. So if you have a multi-million-dollar farm or you have a family business, you might have to sell that business just to pay the New Jersey estate and inheritance tax. In other states, you don't have to do that. So if you move your business to another state, it's more competitive. So big businesses look, when the seniors in the company and older family members, they look to move the business because they're afraid of the death tax.
So let's play this out a little bit. If, in fact, the death tax or one of the death taxes is, in fact, eliminated, wouldn't that mean, I mean, think about this, folks. Some have argued, Assembly Speaker Prieto, who we've obviously spoken to, and others have argued, if you do away with one of those taxes, or both, you lose the revenue that you would get from those people who die in New Jersey and pay those estate and inheritance taxes. What about that revenue? We already have a fiscal problem, and the argument is you make it worse.
The surveys say that we are losing millionaires. We're losing hundreds of millionaires. So the question becomes...
Why? Because it's too expensive to die in the state?
Of course, because if you have a family business and you move to 48 other states, the estate and inheritance tax, these are either less or non-existent. So that's just one of the high taxes we have in the state that forces people to move.
Okay. So let's try this other one. The Transportation Trust Fund. No secret to people watching us on public television, FiOS, and listening on the radio as well, or on the internet. Roads, bridges, either crumbling, fear of collapsing. There is not a stable source of funding. Been debated for a long time. The question is, why can't the legislature, together with the governor, figure out a stable source of funding? And why can't you simply, with New Jersey having one of the lowest gas taxes in the nation, with gas prices being so low, just simply say, we're going to raise the gas tax? Why not, Assemblyman?
Well, it isn't why not, because I said if we could look at some other taxes to lower, and we at least send a message to people that we're looking at lowering taxes, I would support a stable revenue of a gas tax. I said that publicly. I got in trouble for that. But it
with whom?
With people in the Republican Party, people in the Democratic Party, everybody. Anytime you say you'll favor any kind of tax increase, you're the bad guy. But I said it has to be consistent. We have to have some policy about lowering taxes. Now, here's the problem, and you know this as a former Assembly person, that the Democrats have been in charge for 13 years. They could have passed some sort of tax. They could have passed some sort of stable revenue source. They didn't do it. All of a sudden, now Jon Bramnick comes into the discussion. The minute something's not passed, somehow they need my vote. So, look, you know the deal. The deal is they didn't want to pass any sort of revenue enhancer or tax while they were in charge before an election. And now, of course, you're going to see it done.
Whoa, what do you mean you're going to see it done? Make a prediction for 2016 with respect to not only the gas tax, but more importantly for people watching, that those dollars will go to this thing called the Transportation Trust Fund, which funds the roads and bridges, which should hopefully give people a better sense that roads and bridges will be safer. Is that what you're saying?
Well, everyone agrees that if we do pass a constitutional amendment, the money has to go into a lockbox.
Explain that constitutional amendment.
Well, right now, if you just pass a statute or a bill, during budget season, the administration or the legislature can do whatever they want with the money. It's not locked in any specific program. But if you do a constitutional amendment, that means if you pass a gas tax and it's constitutionally dedicated, no one, governor, legislator, can take that money out of that box. I guarantee you that is going to happen, and I guarantee you as soon as the crisis hits, there will be a solution.
You mentioned constitutional amendment. It's interesting. As we were down here in the Princeton area in New Jersey, the Business and Industry Association, New Jersey Business and Industry Association, hundreds of business leaders, legislators, the leaders of the state are here talking about the future of the state's business community, creating jobs, fueling the economy. The pension situation, the public employee pension situation, a crisis that you and your colleagues have been trying to deal with. As we are here, the President of the Senate, Steve Sweeney, has introduced the idea, legislation that would call for a constitutional amendment that would, again, guarantee that the state would, in fact, make a pension contribution, pay their part, which he argues and other Democrats have said the state hasn't done. You say?
I say, tell me where the money's coming from. Yeah, anybody can pass a constitutional amendment. Then in a $32 billion revenue for the state of New Jersey, which is basically our revenue to the state.
You mean the state budget?
State budget. Where are you getting the money from? He doesn't want to talk about reforms, any further reforms.
Further reforms, euphemism for what? Give back, more givebacks with state employees?
Well, you have to begin to understand there's an $80 billion deficit here. Trying to
in the pension fund.
Exactly. Trying to catch up on an $80 billion deficit is close to impossible. So my question to those who say they want a constitutional amendment, just tell me, in a $32 billion budget, where are you going to get the money from? No one wants to answer that question. No reforms, but also they're not saying where the money's coming from.
So let's stay on this, Assemblyman. you're saying that the Senate president, who's proposed that this item be put on the November 2016 ballot for voters to say whether they want the Constitution to be changed to say that the state must do this. You don't like the idea unless the president of the Senate and others say exactly where the dollars come from?
Of course. Because at some point, if you have to pay $6 billion on a $32 billion budget, you have to identify the money. Now,
excuse me, the $6 billion would be the pension contribution.
Or $7 billion. Because if you look at the future, these are the kind of numbers you're talking about to bring the pension back to solvency. But let's talk about one other thing. There was a bipartisan panel that came up with suggestions. Governor Burns' son was on it. They talked about what you had to do. The teachers union was on board. They signed this roadmap for reform, okay? And all of a sudden, that's disappeared. And I'm going to tell you, at some point, we're going to have to face the music here. You know, you don't want to face it now? Fine. But identify where the money's coming from.
Final question on this. Assemblyman, do you believe that the public employees who are involved in this pension situation, do you believe that in spite of the 2011 agreement that was reached, the bipartisan agreement, that the givebacks that they were involved in, the concessions that they made, do you believe that there are more concessions that need to be made by public employees?
What I believe is what the bipartisan panel said. We don't have much choice. Now, you know something? I run a business. I try to give people raises all the time. I try to give them bonus. I like people. All I'm trying to say is we need to save this system. And just by having political arguments and saying we're going to pass constitutional amendments, that may not save the system based on what our own bipartisan panel said. So, look, I'm just living in reality. And it's not about public, it's not that I dislike public unions. I went to public high school, all right? I love my teachers. I love teachers. I love police officers. I like firefighters. But there has to be a realistic discussion here. And if you're not going to have a realistic discussion, it's just going to be a political battle, you're not going to solve anything.
Final question, Assemblyman. Keeping New Jerseyans safe as we move into 2016. Terrorism, the role of state government.
Well, I think that Chris Christie, coming from the U.S. Attorney's Office, being a federal prosecutor and being a governor for 6 years, I think we have a strong leader in that regard. And that's one area that the legislature needs to show strong leadership and make sure that, you know, we do everything we can to keep people in New Jersey safe without discrimination. We have to do it in a fair and fundamentally fair way.
We can strike that balance, Assemblyman?
Oh, we've been doing this in this country for 200 years, respecting rights and also investigating terrorism. And I think that's one of the reasons we need police to have more resources in terms of their ability to fight the terrorism.
Thank you, Assemblyman.
Thanks, Steve. Good to see you.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD, and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We're here with New Jersey Assembly Speaker Vincent Prieto at the Public Policy Forum of the Business and Industry Association here in New Jersey. Mr. Speaker, the top business issues facing the state are?
Well, as always, we want to make sure our economy gets better, making New Jersey affordable for businesses to come here and be able to stay here and create those jobs. So those are key components of the outlook for this next year. And as I hear, everybody thinks it's going to be a better year, and we really hope so. We need revenues to be able to do all those good things, to be able to give incentives to businesses.
Let's talk about bringing in revenue. We'll talk about the Transportation Trust Fund in a second. But one of the issues I know is going to come up in the policy forum that I'll be moderating with you and your legislative leader colleagues is the issue of how some say it's very expensive to die in the state of New Jersey, the two taxes in the state, the inheritance and the estate tax. You said last year at this forum when I asked you about it, some said, New Jersey's is the only state in the nation with both taxes. Right. Some of your Republican colleagues said, let's do away with one or both of them. You said, yeah, if we did that, we'd lose the revenue, can't afford it. Have you changed your opinion about that in the last year?
Well, if you go back to last year, and I know we can look at sort of interviews, what I had said is we couldn't get do away with it one full swoop, because it's about $440 million for each one of them.
Explain it to people. We lose that revenue?
That revenue, that's approximately how much comes in every year. So the estate tax, let's take that one, because that's one of the ones that I've been talking about that we should be getting rid of. The federal level, it's about $5.4 million. The state of New Jersey, $675.
Explain it to people. So if you die in the state, break it down.
Yeah,
I know it's a depressing conversation, but break it down.
It is. If you die in the state of New Jersey and your estate is greater than $675,000, there's a tax associated with it. And actually, in New Jersey, there's a cliff. You actually go to $1. So if you were $674, you pay nothing. $675, you pay from $1. So it's not in excess of $675. We need to bring that up. We need to then phase it out. And what I have proposed, and it was sort of coupling it in with, the Transportation Trust Fund, that we go phasing it out over maybe a 3-year period, so that way, or maybe a 4-year period, because the federal level's $5.4 million. If we can get there, that will be better. If we could phase it out completely, which I would be open to do that, but we would need to do it in a little bit so the economy catches up and we can plug that $440 million hole. So that's what I've been saying all along. It's how do you compromise and how do you get rid of it and give these individuals that comfort level that in New Jersey, you can leave your state and it won't be taxed to death.
Real quick before I let this go, what would you say to your Republican colleague, Jon Bramnick, and others who say, we're losing too many millionaires from the state of New Jersey who decide as they get closer to the end of their life, they do not want to leave that much money to the government. They want to leave it to their families. They go to Florida. We lose them, which means we lose the revenue anyway, you say?
Yeah, we have to work on that, and that's why I've been open to do it, and everybody has, and this is not something that I want to say that it was my idea. I was always open to doing this because this is something that was brought to our attention, and listen, from both sides of the aisle, because $675,000, as you know, in the state of New Jersey, that's not a very high number. So it affects a lot of people in the state of New Jersey. We need to do a better job with that, and we need to work on it, on getting rid of it. And I think we probably could do that as part of the negotiations for our Transportation Trust Fund.
Let's talk about that. Transportation Trust Fund is a fund that was set up in the mid-1980s in the state of New Jersey to pay for long-term transportation projects, roads, bridges, to protect the citizens of the state of New Jersey, to protect our quality of life. Roads and bridges are crumbling. They are in disrepair. That fund is about to go under. And the question becomes, where is that stable source of funding? You have said we need a gas tax. Gas prices are low as we speak going into 2016. What are the odds that we increase the gas tax? And that is where that revenue comes from, to fund this fund to pay for the roads and bridges.
I'm sort of smiling in my head because you and I did an interview when I first became Speaker. And
same subject?
Same subject than you asked, and it was January 21st of 14. And the reason I remember the governor was getting sworn in that day, and you asked me about a gas tax, and I said that I was for it. And everybody thought I was crazy when I did that interview. That has become the low-hanging fruit.
You mean crazy for doing it with me, or just crazy for saying what you said?
Just crazy for saying what I was said, but I actually knew what was coming, being the former budget chairman, that the trust fund was going to run out of money. Every cent we collect, and we have not raised a gas tax since 1988, every penny that we collect is going to pay down debt. In this fund, we had $1.8 billion that was supposed to pay go. That is money that you take out of your wallet and pay for it, not put it on a credit card. We only did $75 million in that fund of PayGo. We borrowed the rest. So we have literally borrowed every cent of this particular 5-year cycle. We can't afford to kick the can down the road anymore. No real money comes off into back from that debt until like 2028 and then 2035. So we need a sustainable source of income. I've talked with you back almost 2 years ago, January 21st of 14, that I said we need to do a gas tax. And the reason was because I knew that this was going to be a problem. Gas prices are very low now. We haven't raised a gas tax since 1988. We need to fix our roads and bridges. 36% of them are either obsolete or in structural disrepair. So we need to work on those because almost 11 million residents ride over these bridges every day. So we don't want a tragedy, but there's also a statistic out there which is interesting. $650 $1,000 you spend a year in repairs to road wear and tear. Actually, I'm a recipient of that. My son got a pothole, blew out a tire, a rim had to be reconditioned. It was about $600. So people don't understand that you need to fix that. It'll be a better commute. It'll be quicker to get to places, safer ride. We need to do this because New Jersey, corridor state, is what makes New Jersey attractive for businesses to come here.
But, Mr. Speaker, quick follow-up on that. Virtually every poll I've seen, you've seen them as well, and you know where I'm going, have said that 2/3 of New Jerseyans say no. We do not want an increase in the gas tax. And you are telling people that what they don't want, they need.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that if you ask New Jersey, it's how the question's asked. You asked anybody, do you want your gas tax raised? Do you want any tax raise? Absolutely not. New Jersey's #1 in property taxes. It's the #1 place not to retire to. So we're #1 in a lot of things we don't want to be. So if you raise taxes or tell them about raising taxes, of course they're going to say no. But at the end of the day, you need to educate them why this needs to be done. Because by doing that, we're actually going to spur our economy. You're going to create jobs. And also, more than a third, almost close to 40% of it is bought from out of state. And that will still be the case.
I mean motorists who are not from New Jersey?
Not from New Jersey, because since being a corridor state, and we are some 40-something cents cheaper than our surrounding states, we're still going to be cheaper than them, so we're still going to be able to get that amount of revenue that comes from the pockets of people outside of New Jersey to invest. So it's an education process. It needs to get done, and then once you do that, hopefully that revenue will help us lower their taxes, because it's like a domino effect. It's all intertwined.
The other huge issue that you and your colleagues, we thought progress was made in 2011. I don't know if people thought it was fixed, but the pension crisis, the public employee and pension crisis, as we move into 2016, how bad is it? How much money is owed, or what is the debt, and what are the possible solutions?
Well, in 11, a lot of reforms were done. Reforms that were going to save $120 billion.
Define reform. You mean give backs from public employees?
Public employees started paying more into the pension, started paying for the health benefits, so they had more skin in the game. And that was going to be a savings about $120 billion over 30 years. But the other caveat is that the state had to pay into it. We were going to do it in 7 years, pay 1/7 at a time. When we got to the third...
1/7 of the debt.
1/7 of the debt to be fully funded. And that's what was the deal. We came into some tough economic times. Our revenue projections, as the former budget chairman, were not met, and we came into a problem. We did not put into the pension. That 1 year, we were supposed to put $2.25 billion. We put about $671 million.
The governor says the money's not there.
And that's understandable. But how do we do this? I've been talking about potentially spreading it over maybe another 5 years to give the economy a chance to bounce back and get those revenues. But we have to put into it. Those reforms you talked about, the employees are paying another $400 million every year. So they've been putting their money year in, year out. The state of New Jersey hasn't been. So we have to find it. But again, it's all a catch. We need revenues. And that's why we need to do all these things. Transportation Trust Fund, again, key components for us to get all the revenue so we can pay what we need to invest in.
Is the President of the Senate, your colleague, your Democratic colleague, Steve Sweeney, right when he says we need a constitutional change that allows the voters in November of 2016 to go to the ballot and say, you know what, the state of New Jersey must pay their fair share, must put in what it is they're supposed to put in. Is he right about that?
Well, you're preaching to the choir on that, because I think we definitely need to pay into it. I believe in that concept.
We need to change the Constitution to do that.
That is something we're talking with our caucus. We actually had a discussion on it this past week. We're going through it to see what the pros and cons of doing that. And it's something I believe in, because I think the state has to pay into it. We have an obligation. These were promises that were made to these people, but not promises. They have been
What people?
The state employees, the municipal employees, all state workers. The problem is they've been paying into it. We have not. We took pension holidays. If you go back in history, history will teach you where the problems is. Prior administration, they've been both Republican and Democratic. There's been problems. Money that was borrowed, they stopped paying into the pension. They took a pension holiday, was at the time, oh, everything's great, the money's coming in, the stock market, you know what? You should have been putting your money in, year out. We wouldn't be having this conversation today.
Mr. Speaker, in 2016, with so many people concerned about terrorism, protecting ourselves, what is the role of state government and how much can state government do to actually protect people from terrorism?
Well, we have to stay vigilant, and we have a very big role, especially in New Jersey. We have airports, train stations. So, as it's said out there, you see something, you report it. That is something that's very important. But we have to, work together with the federal, county, and local to make sure that we make New Jersey, a safe environment for us.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by Barnabas Health, the New Jersey Education Association, the law firm of Gibbons PC, New Jersey Resources, NJM, NJ Best, International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, and by these public-spirited organizations, individuals, and associations committed to informing New Jersey citizens about the important issues facing the Garden State, and by Employers Association of New Jersey. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
Your health is a precious resource, the foundation for everything you do. So at Barnabas Health, we do all we can to restore, protect, and improve it. Should you need care, we offer world-renowned specialists and amazing technology. Yet we also have hundreds of programs to help you avoid the need for that care in the first place. We're here for your health, so you can live, love, work, play, and dream. Barnabas Health. Life is better, healthy.